What do you do when standing for God could cost you everything? Not your comfort, not your reputation, but your freedom, your future, even your life. Daniel faced that question, not once, but over and over again. And in a foreign land, surrounded by pressure to conform, he chose courage. Hello, my friend. I am Elior. Thank you for joining me on another scripture walk. Daniel's story doesn't begin with strength. It begins with loss. In Jerusalem, his homeland, the kingdom was overtaken by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Young men were taken captive, chosen for their intelligence, their potential, their usefulness. Daniel was one of them. Daniel 1:3-4. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, children in whom was no blemish, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. Daniel didn't choose Babylon. Babylon was forced upon him. And sometimes that's where courage begins. Not when life is easy, but when everything familiar is taken away. The king offered Daniel something that seemed small, but it wasn't. Food from the king's table, rich, luxurious, appealing. But it violated what Daniel knew was right before God. Daniel 1:8. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat. Notice that phrase, purposed in his heart. Courage didn't start in the moment. It started in a decision made before the pressure came. Daniel didn't wait to see what everyone else would do. He didn't ask, is this really that big of a deal? He had already settled it, and when the test came, his courage simply followed his conviction. Daniel didn't just quietly resist. He respectfully stood firm. He asked for a different diet, a simple one, vegetables and water, and he trusted God with the outcome. Daniel 1:15, and at the end of 10 days their countenances appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. God honored Daniel's courage. But notice this, Daniel didn't obey God because he knew the result would be favorable. He obeyed God because it was right. That's real courage. Doing what is right, even when you don't know how it will turn out. God didn't just sustain Daniel, he elevated him. Daniel 1:17. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Daniel rose in influence, in wisdom, in position. But here's what makes his story powerful. He didn't change. Babylon didn't reshape him. Its culture didn't redefine him. Its pressure didn't silence him. He lived in Babylon, but he did not become Babylon. And that's the tension every believer feels. Living in a world that pulls one way, while God calls us another. Years passed, kings changed, empires shifted, but Daniel remained, faithful, consistent, unmoved, until one law changed everything. Under King Darius, a decree was signed. No one could pray to any god or man, except the king, for 30 days. Daniel 6:7. Whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save of thee, O king, he shall be cast into the den of lions. This wasn't about food anymore. This wasn't about preference. This was about worship, about loyalty, about who Daniel truly served. And the consequence was death. Daniel didn't hide. He didn't compromise. He didn't adjust his faith to fit the law. Daniel 6:10. Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he did aforetime. As he did aforetime. Daniel didn't suddenly become courageous. He had always been faithful, and when the moment came, his consistency became his courage. He didn't make a scene. He simply refused to stop. And sometimes the greatest act of courage is quiet obedience. Daniel was arrested, accused, condemned, and thrown into a den of lions, a sealed stone placed over the entrance, a night of uncertainty for everyone except Daniel. Because Daniel's confidence wasn't in escaping the lions, it was in trusting God, no matter what happened. Daniel 6:22. My God hath sent his angel, and hath shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me. God didn't just deliver Daniel from Babylon. He delivered Daniel in Babylon, right in the middle of the danger, right in the place of testing. God was there. Daniel's courage wasn't personality. It wasn't stubbornness. It wasn't fearlessness. It was faith. Faith built over time. Faith practiced in private. Faith proven in small decisions before the big ones ever came. That's what we often miss. The courage in the lion's den started with the conviction at the dinner table. The public stand was built on private obedience. And the same is true for us. Courage isn't created in crisis. It's revealed. And here's something important to understand. Walking with God does not mean a perfect life. The Bible is filled with people who followed God and still struggled. Moses doubted and said he couldn't speak. Elijah called down fire from heaven and later ran in fear. David was a man after God's own heart and yet fell into serious sin. Jonah ran from God's calling entirely. Peter boldly declared loyalty and then denied Jesus 3 times. Thomas struggled with doubt. None of them were fixed, but they walk with God anyway. And Daniel stands among them, not because he was flawless, but because he was faithful. You may not be in Babylon, but you are in a world that constantly pressures you to compromise, to blend in, to stay quiet, to adjust what you believe, to make life easier. So here's the question. Where is God calling you to stand? Is it in your home, your workplace, your choices, your convictions, your community? Courage doesn't always look like a lion's den. Sometimes it looks like a quiet decision to stay faithful when it would be easier not to. Daniel's story reminds us, you don't need a perfect life to walk with God, but you do need a settled heart, a heart that says, before the pressure comes, I already know who I belong to. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to like, share and subscribe, and join me on future scripture walks. And here's something I want you to think about. Where in your life is God calling you to show courage, not just personally, but within your family, your church, or your community? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And next time, we're going to explore another powerful truth from Scripture, one that may challenge the way you see your circumstances.